Keeping you up to speed with all the main stories making the headlines now this Friday lunchtime. It's the ITV News.
The Metropolitan Police apologise for the perfect storm of disorder that could have led to deaths at Euro 2020. The final report into the violence at Wembley says warning signs were missed that allowed thousands of ticketless fans to storm the stadium. Also this lunchtime, the grandmother of Arthur Labinjo-Hughes says his death destroyed her family's life as his father and stepmother are sentenced for their crimes. Alec Baldwin says he's not responsible for the shooting death of a director on his film set.
Do you feel guilt?
No. I feel that there is. I feel that someone is responsible for what happened, and I can't say who that is, but I know it's not me.
And the giant leaps for a small explorer, the 4-year-old who trekked his way into the record books.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Charlene White.
Good afternoon. It was inevitable and could have led to deaths. That's just one of the conclusions of a damning report into the disorder back in July at the Euro 2020 final at Wembley. Thousands of ticketless fans stormed the stadium in what's being called a national day of shame. An independent review has found that authorities failed to adequately prepare or anticipate it. The Metropolitan Police says it's deeply sorry and the FA has apologised too. Sangeeta Kandola has the latest.
This is what happened at the Euro 2020 England-Italy final at Wembley. The play on the pitch, a distant memory. These are the scenes and the drama from that day that are hard to forget. Today, a report into the disorder by Baroness Dame Louise Casey found fans could have been killed. She called them a horde of ticketless, drunken and drugged-up thugs who stormed the stadium, broke through barricades and forced their way inside on what she called a day of national shame. The report also highlighted a collective failure to plan for the foreseeable risk of disorder. Alcohol and drugs were a key factor. Fans arrived 8 hours before kick-off. COVID restrictions put extra strain on planning, including the loss of experienced stewards. And she said if England had won, it would have created a further huge public safety risk, with thousands of people planning to storm the stadium at full time. Fans Scott Furlong and his son Kian, who has cerebral palsy and is in a wheelchair, the whole experience was shocking.
As I was pushing Kian through the crowd, his wheelchair was acting like a bit of a snowplow, collecting bags, beer bottles, cans. Like I said, it was tough going.
The Metropolitan Police say they're deeply sorry. The Football Association also apologised for the terrible experience many supporters endured on what should have been one of the greatest nights in the history of English football. Sangeeta Kandola, ITV News.
For more on this, our sports editor Steve Scott sent this update from Wembley a short time ago.
Well, I think Baroness Casey's conclusions reflect very much what everybody was thinking on that day. Quite frankly, those that were here found it a very scary and intimidating place to be. She described a perfect storm of events. Of course, England in their first major final for 50 plus years. The pandemic restrictions had just been eased. Ticketless fans here knew that there were empty seats inside the stadium. Wembley was only 3/4 full, and there were no fan zones around here for fans to go and watch the game. Now, Baroness Casey estimated that 2,000 fans without tickets got inside, 400 were thrown out, but they did that either by tailgating fans, legitimate fans with tickets, or they burst through disabled gates and fire exits. And she concluded shockingly that we were very lucky that day not to experience a loss of life. And worryingly, she said that if England had won that penalty shootout, there were 6,000 fans without tickets outside here, ready to storm the stadium, and that obviously would have thrown up a huge public health risk. Now, she doesn't lay the finger of blame on anyone in particular, but she did say there was woeful planning by the authorities responsible for everybody's safety here that day. That includes, of course, the police and the FA, and essentially she said what they were doing as they were planning for a football match, and what happened that day was much more than that.
The grandmother of a 6-year-old boy killed at the hands of his father and his girlfriend has said his death has destroyed her family's life. In an emotional statement read on behalf of Arthur's mother, Madeleine Halcrow said Emma Tustin and Thomas Hughes had taken Arthur's sparkle, his naivety, and then took him from this world. Ben is outside court where the pair are being sentenced. Ben Chapman, what's the latest?
Well, the sentencing remarks have begun. The judge in the last 10 or 15 minutes has begun reading his statement to the two defendants. That can be quite a lengthy process, and we'll only learn the sentence that they will get at the end of it. But he's already said that Arthur Labinjo-Hughes, this 6-year-old boy, was subjected to the most unimaginable suffering at the hands of his father and his father's girlfriend. He described their behaviour as often spiteful and at times sadistic. We know he was subjected to harrowing treatment that amounted to child torture over the course of 3 months. Yesterday, Emma Tustin was convicted of Arthur's murder. His father, Thomas Hughes, was convicted of Arthur's manslaughter, and we'll find out their sentences in the coming few minutes. What we heard in court this morning were some moving memories of Arthur from before the abuse began, from his mother. Now, his mother is in prison for an unrelated offence, and so it was his maternal grandmother that read a tearful statement to the court on her behalf. That statement said that Arthur's death hasn't affected my life, it has destroyed my life. Arthur alone was my life, my purpose and reason for living. He was let down by a person he trusted and who should have protected him. They took his sparkle and his naivety, and then they took him from this world. We also heard from Arthur's paternal grandmother, Joanne Hughes. Now, she is watching her son being sentenced today, but she also called social services 2 months before Arthur died, and she said today that Arthur was failed by the very authorities that should have protected him. There is a review underway into the circumstances surrounding Arthur Labinjo-Hughes' death. Of course, we know the only two people responsible for his death were Emma Tustin and Thomas Hughes. We know she will receive a mandatory life sentence for murder. We will find out the length of the sentences very soon.
Ben, thank you. Yorkshire County Cricket Club has removed its entire coaching staff in the wake of the racism investigation at the club. Long-serving Director of Cricket Martin Moxon and head coach Andrew Gale are among the 16 members of the team who have left. The cricket club has said it's committed to taking whatever action is necessary to regain trust. Lewis Hamilton's Formula One team has been urged to drop a sponsorship deal with a company linked to Grenfell Tower. Mercedes has signed a deal with Kingspan, which made some of the insulation used in the cladding. Survivors of the fire have called it truly shocking. Kingspan says it played no role in the design of the cladding on the tower. And the Conservatives have held the safe London seat of Old Bexley and Sidcup in a by-election. Louis French is the new MP, replacing James Brokenshire, who died of lung cancer in October. But the 34% turnout was the lowest as a by-election for the past few years. A new COVID vaccine trial has found that booster jabs may be as effective as scientists had hoped. 7 different jabs were found to boost immunity against COVID to some degree, with Pfizer and Moderna most effective. Our Deputy Political Editor Anushka Asthana is here. Anushka, this sounds like good news.
It certainly is good news from the University of Southampton. All boosters seeming to do a good job. But as you say, the two that we are rolling out, Pfizer and Moderna, doing very well. Look, it's all about immunity. The things that are important there are antibodies and T cells. And this study suggests that there is a big increase in both of those, which, and this has to be very cautious, might be good news for that new variant, Omicron. But the reason I say we have to be cautious is the work going on Omicron is in the very early stages. So we need to see where that goes. That said, the people I've been talking to in the department of Health are pretty excited about this. And they're also quite reassured by another statistic that they're looking at, and that is the number of people with COVID right now in hospital. Despite huge cases, as we know, in society, that number has gone down a little bit, which is a sign that the booster is doing well. Now, everyone wants to get their booster, and ever since the vaccination committee suggested all adults could have them after 3 months, I think there has been a bit of confusion. I, for one, have been constantly refreshing the page to try and get my appointment. But in fact, the rules have not yet changed. When they do change this week, first for over 40s, 7 million people will become eligible overnight. So it's a huge job for the NHS. And the flip side of that is some concern about how everything else continues in terms of the health service more broadly.
Well, let's talk about that mixed messaging surrounding Omicron, which you mentioned earlier. A lot of people are worried about restrictions being reintroduced. So what's the latest?
Well, the latest is that the Prime Minister and others are saying, go ahead with whatever you're doing. It's a less cautious approach than last year because we now have the vaccine, but they are desperate to avoid going further and ending up in a lockdown.
OK, Anushka, thanks very much. So we've had yet another week of COVID updates. Let's take a look at where we stand now and what could potentially happen next. Professor Penny Ward's a virologist from the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, the booster jab, we've had that news this morning that it's as effective as hoped. So need for us to book in for one is higher than ever, isn't it?
Absolutely. Having the booster vaccination when invited is the best way that people can protect themselves against becoming infected, ill, and more importantly, becoming seriously unwell with COVID, particularly since we're a little bit uncertain about this new strain and whether it will spread in the UK.
Now, talking of that new strain, did that come as a surprise to you?
I have to say that it didn't come as a great surprise because new strains of COVID will emerge all the time. I think it was inevitable that at some point a new strain would emerge, if not here, elsewhere, and be brought into the country, particularly since travel had started up again and people were clearly relaxing their self-protective measures, including mask wearing and so forth. So we have to face this with these coronaviruses. They mutate very rapidly and new strains emerge extremely quickly in everybody that becomes infected. So really reducing infection and illness rates is the most important thing.
And that's a reality, isn't it, Professor Ward, that although the focus is on Omicron, the reality is we could see more of these stronger variants to come over the next few months?
Well, at the moment, we don't know whether this strain is radically different from what we faced before. And if indeed it is susceptible to protection by our current vaccines, then we may experience nothing very much more than we've already seen with the other variants that we've experienced here, with the difference that the vaccination will protect people against becoming seriously ill, protecting our hospital care to carry on with the catch-up of routine illness treatment that the NHS needs to make. But we, as you say, all of the time that there is circulating infection, there is always the danger of a new emerging variant that could behave differently.
OK, Professor Ward, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Still to come. The actor Alec Baldwin says he is not responsible for the fatal shooting on his film set. And the peak of perfection, the 4-year-old climbing his way into the record books. It's a week since Storm Arwen hit, bringing high winds, freezing temperatures and knocking out power to thousands of homes. For some parts of Scotland and North East England, they still don't have the power back on. The army have been sent in to help, and a major incident has been declared in County Durham. But that is little comfort to those who've had to endure night after night of miserable conditions. Well, Johnny Blair is in St John's Chapel in County Durham for us. Johnny, how are things looking there?
Well, yes, this is one of the rural parts of County Durham, a village, St John's Chapel, as you say. And here, it's one of those parts of the county which has been without power now for almost 7 nights. This place, well, this is normally the village hall. For the last 2 days, it's been turned into a makeshift cafe where people who are affected can come in, get something to eat, something to drink, and also use the heaters as well, essentially to keep warm and to get fed. Now, it was last night when the County Council declared this emergency situation and asked the government to send around 100 representatives of the armed forces in to try and help them. Essentially what they are doing, and they are out and about now doing just this, is delivering parcels, knocking on people's doors, checking how people are, building on what was being done by the police and the fire service in this area particularly. But a week now, people are starting to get frustrated, they're starting to get fed up. Northern Power Grid, which is responsible for the electricity in this area, and the County Council say they're working together to do everything they can to try and get those affected homes back up and running. But certainly some people here are expecting it to be into the weekend and maybe even next week until all of those affected properties across the county are with power again.
OK, Johnny, thanks very much. The actor Alec Baldwin has said he does not feel guilt about the death of a director on his film set because he is not responsible. In October, Helena Hutchins was fatally shot by Mr Baldwin with a prop gun loaded with live ammunition. It happened during rehearsals for the Western in an incident that shocked Hollywood. But the 63-year-old is adamant he didn't pull the trigger. Emma Patterson reports.
The incident that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. 6 weeks ago, cinematographer Helena Hutchins was fatally shot on a movie set by a gun in the hand of Alec Baldwin. In his first interview since the deadly incident, the Oscar-nominated actor has spoken out about what happened that day.
Do you feel guilt?
No. I feel that there is. I feel that someone is responsible for what happened, and I can't say who that is, but I know it's not me.
Baldwin said it was Helena herself who directed his every move during the fatal rehearsal.
Now, in this scene, I'm going to cock the gun. And I said, do you want to see that? And she said, yes. So I take the gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger. I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off. I let go of the hammer of the gun goes off.
Criminal charges haven't been issued, but there is an ongoing investigation into the question that nobody seems to have the answer to. How did live ammunition come to be on set?
No one had any idea until that police officer, that sheriff's officer, said to me, this is the slug, 45 caliber slug. And then the kind of insanity-inducing agony of thinking that someone put a live bullet in the gun.
Legal experts have questioned Baldwin's decision to speak out.
It's never a good idea during an active investigation to speak publicly. So I think part of controlling the narrative does take his career into play. I think that he will work again. And it sounds like he intends to work again in January.
When asked if his career is over, Baldwin replied, it could be. For Helena Hutchins, considered a rising star in the industry, that is a certainty. Her family left to reconcile the fact that one day she went to work and didn't come home. Emma Patterson, ITV News.
Next, climbing Snowdon is no small feat, especially if you're only 4 years old. But that's what one determined little boy has done. Albie Jr. Thomas scaled Wales' highest peak with his dad at the weekend. Even more impressive, he did the climb with a prosthetic leg. And it's that trek that's got him into the record books. Martin Stew went to meet them.
I don't know if you remember when you were 4, but walking upstairs like this would have worn me out. The kid we're going to talk to now has just walked up Snowdon, one of the youngest kids to do it, and there's something else a little bit special about Albie. Here we go, Albie and his dad Daniel. You've just walked up Snowdon, one of the youngest lads to do it. How was it?
Good.
Good? Was it difficult?
No.
No? Come on, Dad, it must have been pretty tricky. What, 8 miles?
The whole round trip? No, not for Albie, no.
Because, Albie, you've got a superpower, haven't you? Can I see it? Can you show me a superpower? Look at this. Whoa. And you've had that prosthetic leg since you were how old? 15 months?
15.
15 months.
Yeah.
And Dad Daniel, you decided that at that moment, didn't you?
The first minute when the nurse handed me in, I said to him, I'm going to get him in the Paralympics as long as he wants to.
And how much of a bond does it give you? What's the kind of the positive thing of doing something like a real challenge to get all the way up Snowdon?
It's because I found the love of running after the amputation, so it's great now. He wants to be a part of this with me as well, and he's showing me how it's done. He inspires me to do it.
So you're the inspiration now, because you were telling me, who's your hero, Albie?
Dad, me, and Archie.
And Archie, he's a mate from school. Oh, okay. But Dad gets the nod. And you want to maybe be a Paralympian in the future, or a football player?
Football player.
Football player. So that's why you do all the exercise and you're so strong. And you've raised some money, haven't you? Who have you been raising money for?
Everyone.
Everyone? But most recently...
This one, cancer research, haven't we?
Even for teenagers.
Yeah, that's another charity we raise money for.
Fantastic. So you've just climbed the second highest mountain in the UK, or the highest in Wales anyway, Snowdon.
In Wales, yeah.
And what's next?
Ben Nevis, hopefully this year.
Ben Nevis? That's the tallest. You won't get up there, will you, Albie? No way. No way. But actually you might now, because what's today?
What's today?
My birthday.
It's your birthday. Happy birthday, Albie. Albie has just turned 5 and he's got Ben Nevis to conquer. Well done, lad.
Now, just before we go, we've just had an update on the sentencing of Emma Tustin and Thomas Hughes for the killing of 6-year-old Arthur Labinjo-Hughes. Ben Chapman is with us once again. Ben, what can you tell us?
Well, in the last few minutes, the judge has sentenced Emma Tustin, who inflicted the fatal assault on Arthur Labinjo-Hughes, to a life sentence with a minimum term in prison of 29 years, describing her as a manipulative woman who dehumanised Arthur by abusing him for months. Arthur's father, Thomas Hughes, who participated in that abuse and encouraged Tustin to use violence on him, has been given a sentence of 21 years in prison. The judge said that neither of them had shown any remorse, and he said that while he can sentence, he can do nothing to restore to Arthur's loved ones the life they have lost.
OK, Ben, thanks very much. That's it from the Lunchtime News. We will have more for you on the sentencing for Arthur's murder at 6:30. The news where you are, well as national weather. Bye-bye.